Welcome, gentlemen. I'm delighted to host this panel. It's the industry where I actually originally come from. And we have three traditional bankers, I can almost say, or people who have worked with banks as we know them. And we have a gentleman, Michael, who very much represents the fintech emergence. So I'm glad to have you here, gentlemen.
Thank you.
I want to start actually with you, Michael. You don't have a banking background. How did you come up with Bitstocks? And why are you thinking that you can transform and change the banking industry?
Because I'm coming from the consumer standpoint, I guess the humanitarian standpoint, and what captivated me about Bitcoin is it can make society honest. And there are two, I'll say, primitives that we need resolved in society to have a much more cohesive society that I would love to see is more honesty in banking, more honesty in our political systems. Our political systems, not my challenge. I really hope there's someone out here that's going to take that on. But with banking, ironically, I actually thought that was a much easier concept to attack and address by utilizing the public ledger as a means to build a financial infrastructure on top of it to provide transparency and invite the banking world to do the same by leading by example, by actually building something as opposed to just speaking on something.
Right. Daniel, you have many years of banking experience. You have been consulting banks, and you now sit on the board of a Swiss bank. The theme of the conference is Ignite the Power of Data. How has the relevance of data changed for the banking industry? And how is integrity particularly important?
So the news is, in my view, that the future is going to be really challenging for banks, because what you just said did not really happen over the past 10, 20 years. Banks have seriously neglected just IT as a whole. There's also a rational explanation for that. I mean, banks had such huge margins. It was such a profitable business that you were not forced to basically optimize and make your IT more efficient. So you could just let the engine run, patch a few things here, patch a few things there. So the state of IT and data is really bad in banks. I think that's a fair statement. I can say, I'm representing here today my startup, SNGLR. At the same time, banks totally missed the mobile revolution. So since about at least 11 years, we're all walking around with mobile phones. We're using it daily for hours. Anyone here who banks with a traditional bank and says, I love their mobile app and I use it repeatedly every day, raise their hands. I don't even have to look into the audience. I mean, they just totally missed that. Oh, there was one. And thirdly, and this is also, I mean, banks have always made an emphasis that they're not an IT company, they're not about data, it's about people and business and brick and mortar. But I mean, the COVID crisis in all its earnest and what happened is tragic, but it showed that that's all bullshit. I mean, the banks still survived. People were working from home. They were working decentralized, Zoom calls, team calls. So kind of the banking hasn't disappeared just because the brick and mortar was kind of locked up for 1.5 years. I think this shows that banks are strategically now in a very tight spot. And I firmly believe exponential technology, blockchain, AI, AR and VR, in just a few years, I may speak to my banker through my glasses and you will not even know. And this is changing the banking landscape so fundamentally. I'm desperately looking for brick and mortar banks who got it and understand that change. So they need to embrace very fast and pronto blockchain, AI, AR, VR, maybe quantum computing on the horizon. And it's happening in very small homeopathic dosages.
When it comes to technological transformation, IBM is probably one of the go-to partners for the large banks. Do you share this experience, Marc?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is exactly what we see every day in our work with the banks, the banking industry here in Switzerland and also abroad. And I think one can say that the banking industry really has fundamentally a data problem. And this is not really surprising. I mean, everything you said, there's the reasoning. And in addition to that, those application landscapes of banks, of traditional banks especially, they're historically grown over a long time. They're very complex, they're very all over the place, and therefore there is no real habit of storing data centrally in one repository, but it's all over the place in the architecture. And that leads to the fact that it's not very reliable. So a lot of cost goes into reconciliation and bringing it all back together. And that obviously is driving the costs and is lowering also the confidentiality or the confidence in that data. And then again, the same goes obviously when you want to start to interact with the rest of the ecosystem, because banks by definition are quite closed environments, right? And now suddenly you want to start to share, to come together, to get together, to be a partner with somebody, share data in some way, but you don't really have the mindset for it. So blockchain can help, but it's quite a long way.
Urs, you have a background with one of the large wealth advisors. You are now part of one of the first digital asset banks that got a banking license. How do you compare those two experiences that you've made so far? How does SEBA give its clients a new experience?
You know, we heard a lot of old banks, and we are, I would say, not as a new bank as was just described. We're something in the middle. So we try to build a bridge that was from the first day on, because we experienced banking issues when dealing with cryptos. And so basically we looked to build a bank that understands the crypto world. On the other hand, basically we wanted to build a bank for the traditional investors, institutions, to basically have a regulated gateway into the crypto world. So our clients come from both worlds. They cross the bridge, they come from the crypto world and usually want to diversify into some traditional securities, bonds, shares, etc., want to do FX transactions. On the other hand, we have banks, high net worth individuals, we have asset managers that basically want to explore and start to invest into the crypto world. So for this, we basically have several gateways. So we have the traditional gateway, but we also have the blockchains fully integrated in the bank that we offer, and so we can hold, storage, transfer, and trade all these assets that we offer from any world. So we do FX, securities, and cryptos, of course.
So it's really a bit of hand-holding and walking with them in this transformation.
Huge. I mean, I would say the first year we were, until about, I would say, late summer last year, we basically were educators only. So you could find any traditional asset manager bank, they all wanted to hear about crypto, and they all found it super interesting, and basically what happened is, thank you very much. So we come to you when we would consider investing into this. And that has turned, the tide has turned quite dramatically, I would say, third into the fourth quarter. And so basically, yes, there is a big stream of traditional, especially on the banking side, that still don't want to offer it, but the clients push them to have it in the offering. And they're struggling now for solutions, and basically us, kind of a fully licensed bank and security dealer in Switzerland, there is a kind of trust and regulatory element where they feel comfortable to do the first steps.
Right, and in Switzerland, the whole industry relies a lot on this trust element. People like to come to Switzerland because it's a trusted jurisdiction, and banks are obviously known to be long-term stable partners. Michael, you are basically still a scale-up. How do you see Bitstocks competing against established players? What do you think you have an advantage potentially?
Everything. This is a time where being a fly is the advantage instead of being an elephant. I think Switzerland's a perfect time to be speaking this way. I think Switzerland built itself and its foundation on protecting people's property and privacy. Right? We need to upgrade that concept, and we can upgrade that concept. And what we have done with Gravity and how we're implementing our solution at Gravity is you don't need to trust that we are solvent for your capital. You can verify we are solvent for your capital. We're here to protect your property rights. But also, there's a disadvantage if we all just dump things on chain, because now I'm infringing on your privacy, right? So how do we resolve that? Ironically, you need a bank to resolve that. You need to be regulated to resolve that, because I need to be able to do certain things in a legal way that will allow me to provide true privacy to my client and my end user. So the whole notion of, say, cryptocurrencies being very anarchistic, very anti-bank, I don't subscribe to that. I actually see a very strong role for banks, but the conversation as to what value is and what we're transferring is evolving, is changing. So when I say I'm a bank, it's a new term, right? We're here to house value. The users define what that value is. But we just need to have a format, a template, primitives that can encapsulate whatever the value is that's being created by now human beings, right? And that is what our role is to do. So we're here to be the institution for the metanet that we're basically all speaking about. And there's a couple of core components. Utilize the ledger to verify, say, solvency of the institution. Utilize the ledger in order to obfuscate a user's privacy and protect their privacy. And ensure that a user can have ownership over their data and be interoperable with other services and other solutions out there, because I consider myself a pretty smart cookie, if I'm completely honest. There's no way in hell that I'll be able to simulate what human beings want to create. So I've got to focus on the primitives and try and encapsulate everything based on nailing the primitives. And that's our approach. And I honestly think we're going to be a problem for the banking industry because we exist. What happens once I integrate with the open banking protocol in the UK and Barclays customers start coming my way, HSBC's customers start coming my way, and they go, well, why are you going to Gravity? Because I know my money's there. If you implement that solution, I'll stay at Barclays. But will Barclays implement the solution?
You already brought up an important element, open banking. We're going to come to this in a second. But before, I would like to hear from Marc, your customer base. Where do you see the biggest data problems, and where do you think blockchain can help?
Well, I think there are two categories of use cases fundamentally. And probably the first one is sometimes forgotten because it's quite simple, a disruptive technology that can help to make existing things better, right, and more productive. And there's so many use cases, so many possibilities to apply that technology inside of an enterprise just to increase the degree of automation, to make things more efficient, to make the processing of existing products more efficient. For example, compliance, obviously a huge space in the KYC of onboarding, know your customer, where is my data about that customer that wants to onboard, can the data be trusted, etc. So there's a lot of possibilities there. But then again, of course, there's this second horizon where it's all about growth and new revenues. What Urs here represents also with his company, which is really like new products, new asset classes, new services. And there, the traditional banking has only very, very slowly and calmly started to embark on and to imagine how to capitalize on these possibilities. And obviously, these possibilities, the sky is the limit. It's open, the race is open, but that's where the fintechs and the neobanks really are leading the course. And the question for the traditional banks is, do we have to play the game? Do we have to be in there? Does it make sense? And when are we smart followers? Do we stay outside? And many banks haven't really decided on that yet in their strategies.
Appreciate that. Daniel, we have an ongoing exchange, and I think you can resonate a bit with what Marc has said.
Absolutely.
What are the priorities that you see right now in the boards of the banks in Switzerland, particularly?
Yeah, so Marc was summing it up beautifully, because I would always say the crypto and Bitcoin, BTC events were almost like a poisoned apple for many bankers. It took them kind of years to admire it, kind of understand, and it got them so confused that now that they're finally opening up, it's still a lot on the discussions at the board level is around crypto and BTC and crypto trading. But as Marc said, there's so many other use cases out there that blockchain technology can enable, and it actually addresses not necessarily a new investment class or a new, maybe payment solution, but it addresses so many other problems that banks need to fix if they want to really enter the age of exponential technology. If they don't fix it, they're never going to get there. For me, that's a given. So I'm also happy to kind of pre-announce here in this forum, and I know many people are watching from around the world, so there will be a non-profit association called Swiss Open Wealth Association. We're going to go live in July, and the purpose of that is exactly like also Michael said, open banking is so transformatory. But again, in many cases people say, oh, open bank is for retail banks, it's for payment systems. No. We want to, that's why we call it the Swiss Open Wealth Association, because Switzerland is famous, likely not for retail banking. We are famous for private banking, wealth management. If there's one thing we can do really well here in Switzerland, it's probably that. So we want to kind of enable that ecosystem and get banks to mingle with tech companies, fintechs, startups, people who just have good ideas, and hopefully blockchain companies, AI. So everyone from the BSV ecosystem is invited to look at our association when we're going to go live and maybe consider joining if you have an interest in private banking, wealth management, and you think you can bring anything to the table. That's what we want to do. And 20, 30 years ago, talking about this here in this panel, probably the police would have rushed in and arrested us all, because the notion of private banks exchanging data, information, no way. It would literally put you in prison in Switzerland, right? Because we had very strict laws on that. But this is 2021, and we're looking at such a different game-changing environment. Open wealth, open banking is a key cornerstone, and it's going to put the banks, again, if they don't see that trend, it's going to put them in a lot of trouble. So we're building this actually not just because we like to do non-profit associations and we have no time else to kill, but we're doing this because we also want to advance the Swiss wealth management private banking, but it's an open association. We're inviting anyone from around the world with good ideas or some interest in wealth management to join. I think the more smart people we're going to get around the cause, the more it will help, and ultimately it will also help, that's a little patriotic side of it, hopefully the Swiss private banking.
Just a follow-up question here. If you look across the financial industry sector, which segment is most advanced with regards to blockchain?
In banking or outside banking?
The whole financial industry.
I would actually, I don't like semantically the word advanced. So when you say advanced, that would mean...
Most curious.
Yeah,
because I can presume that private banking, it's a lot about confidentiality. It's about trust, as I mentioned earlier. They are very cautious. It's about tradition.
They are cautious, but the poisoned apple, which is crypto and BTC and looking at market speculation and suddenly people getting millionaires overnight, this has, of course, drawn the attention of the private bankers very naturally. And I think it's also fair to say some of the private banks that went now into that segment, including maybe some, they want to benefit on that there's new wealth created and maybe old wealth wants to invest there too. But I just think from the overall potential, we're probably now talking about 10–20% of the overall potential that blockchain technology can bring to banking. So I still struggle with the word advanced, but I would say in private banking it has been looked at probably with more focus, but again, more on the crypto angle. But I think we need to work on things that Marc mentioned, using this as utility solutions, platforms, interoperable data exchanges that can connect banking and wealth management and private banks and take it all to the next level.
It's not the private bank, it's not the investment banks, it's the central banks. Central banks are the ones that are most advanced. The central banks are the ones that run trials with digital currencies, their own digital currencies. And I think it shows kind of the state of banking if the central banks are the innovators, right? So it's a fact, right? There's a coin USC that UBS and a few banks are working on for 4 years, has not gone anywhere. But now the central banks come, the central banks are in, China is in, the US over the summer, I think we will hear a lot about the US. In Europe, SEBA is also involved with the Banque de France on trials on CBDC. So yes, for me, clearly, it's shameful to say as a former investment banker, it's the central banks that basically push that whole concept of blockchain, digitalization, DLT, etc., through and basically force the bank to adopt it.
How does SEBA try to stay abreast of the rapid developments in the industry?
I mean, we look at what is, I think we have our base offering, which we are kind of the bank for banks. So we offer it to banks, we offer it to our clients. In general, looking forward, I think building up our capabilities to be more kind of once then data really comes in when we go retail. That is one thing we are looking at. I think DeFi sector is something that, as a banker, and the first time I saw and I read about DeFi, I said, okay, that's like the devil and holy water, right? As a regulated entity, regulated by, I would say, a very strict regulator, DeFi is something we cannot touch, we have to stay away. We're looking very close at DeFi now, because I think we believe, this will be a huge, huge disruptor for the banking industry. And if you see now who is investing in DeFi, what kind of names, who these people are, it's very clear the smart money is going this way. So all the hedge funds, or a lot of hedge fund managers are investing a lot of money in DeFi, building up these platforms, and I think this is the real disruptor then for the traditional banking.
Appreciate it. Michael, we have brought up already open banking. This has been a buzzword for quite some time now. How do you see blockchain playing into it?
Well, we're going to really blow open the concept. And I think the friction points aren't technological. I think the friction points are going to be at the human level, as in what does a bank really want to disclose? For instance, like how often does a bank need to be audited, right? Quarterly, yearly. And if you have a player out there that is willing to be audited every 10 minutes, can you compete against that, right? So I see the template for open banking and how banks compete and how we're interoperable. Even that is going to be rewritten because it's consumer-based. Once you've got an institution out there that is genuinely vouching on behalf of the consumers, and the consumers have a choice, which we never had before. We've never had a choice to bank with someone who's truly transparent. But if once you have that choice, I don't think it's going to be a case of open banking and interoperability. Unless people employ the same solution as Gravity, this is the reason why Gravity is called Gravity. We will take everything, eventually. We will take everything, unless people implement similar solutions to compete at that level. Because once the cat's out the bag, I just don't see how maintaining the traditional structure of how banks go about obfuscating what their liquidity levels are continues. So I think it just puts a question mark around the whole experiment of what this is. And I'm treating this as an experiment. I think it's a social experiment. And our solutions are based around sparking that experiment and just seeing where it goes, but staying very true to our primitives as an institution. And that is to be open, and it is to be interoperable. And we want to play with other institutions, but I'm not that confident how many institutions are going to be willing to be this transparent at this stage. So it's a huge really question mark.
Trying to be a leader in transparency as well.
Yeah.
Why did Bitstock decide to build on BSV?
It's the only solution that actually works. Before, I would have given you a very charged anti-Ethereum, anti-BTC approach. I think everyone's just bored of that. Ultimately, it's just plumbing, right? And if I'm building a house, which is what my responsibility is to do, is to build a house, it has to be functional. So when you switch on the tap, it works. You flush the toilet, it works. BSV allows me as a CEO of a business to stay in my lane of expertise and forecast my business, right? That's what I need to do. That's what we all need to be able to do. We need to forecast our business. I can't go away from my office on a short break on holiday and come back and my house has been consumed because of something that was completely out of mine and my company's control due to fee markets or they're forking the chain again because of some other dispute. We just need reliable plumbing, and it's as simple as that. If you build on BSV, You've got a plumbing system which I'm pretty much 99.99% confident you will never have to pick up the phone to the plumber once you've implemented it. And I think that's what any CEO or any business owner should want when it comes to blockchain. We've argued for 12 years, far too long. We now have a solution which you should just build and forget about it. That's what BSV is.
So focus on applications built on top of the protocol. Marc, IBM obviously has its own product suite as well. How open are you to collaborate with technology providers versus selling proprietary solutions at IBM?
I think we have seen a huge shift there in the philosophy of the company over the last decade, actually, and it's still going on. And it's really been turning into a very open company, a company that sees itself as an ecosystem provider, and that brings together in a very agile manner its own technology, which is with its own philosophy behind it, and the technology of partners. And it's pretty much the same concept as banks pursue in open banking that you've just mentioned, basically being sufficiently open in your architecture, in your technology, in your underlying coding, so that you can plug into whatever the market has to offer, the ecosystem has to offer, being able to consume services from the ecosystem, share your services with the ecosystem, and orchestrate the whole thing for your clients in the end. Now, being part of the consulting and services unit at IBM anyway, we have to and we want to help our clients solve their business problems. And that's in the center of our activity. And technology comes much, much later. First of all, it's really what is the problem, what is the challenge, then what is the business answer to really reply to that challenge, and then technology basically is an enabler for it. Sometimes technology is so disruptive that it actually can be strategy making, but especially traditional banks are not really there yet.
It's very relationship focused, bringing a solution to the client, independent on where the technology comes from.
Exactly, relationship and value, creating in the end business value that really shows on the balance sheet of your client. If not, you don't really have legitimation as a consultant.
With open banking, is this an opportunity or a threat for an institution like SEBA?
I think we are on our own little island at the moment. We are, as I said, there's not that many banking partners, there are not many high net worth individuals, so we are not a bank of millions and quadrillions of customers, has never been our focus. Of course, we're going to move on. It might come into focus. At the moment, I think we have, just by our offering, we are unique enough to have a few years to go, right? But, of course, we are already looking into the future. So if we go fully digital, if we go especially retail, right, I think then the whole open banking, etc., makes a lot of sense. At the moment, I think we are a niche player. We are a startup. We're 1.5 years old as a bank. We're highly regulated, so we cannot just do whatever we please to do. Even we're a startup, but we are still a bank and securities dealer. So I would say what we currently have, we're going to extend internationally, and then most likely we're going to go, I would say, very wide. And then, of course, I think that whole data, open banking, this is all going to be addressed within SEBA at the moment, I think.
Step by step.
Step by step, yeah. Because you can change the world. Michael tries to change it in one shot, right? We are kind of step by step.
Well, the arms of the Swiss Open Wealth Association are wide open. So if you're interested in open wealth, you will be welcome as of
Just
July.
A question. If you had the opportunity, would you implement a solvency solution? Do you think that would be a good thing to appease your regulator and your regulatory requirements?
If we had the opportunity, especially if we had the time, I think, right, and the focus. Right? It's basically always kind of what is, you have 10,000 different needs and wants, and you have to kind of chop them down to make kind of a delivery plan for our IT or whoever it is that is chewable and deliverable. And so, has not been on the big demand, or
I think if you threw the question to your clients, it would be quite high up there. Would you like us to be more transparent?
If you look at our offering, it is geared to the clients, right? So maybe we have less demanding clients than you do. Our clients mainly want really simple stuff, right? They want to have an exposure to cryptocurrencies. They want to have an exposure to, the other ones want to have a bank that understands their needs and doesn't look at them as criminals. And I think that is always, that's already a big problem solved for quite a lot of people, right? Yeah. So do we try to solve another problem on top of that? Currently not.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think there's really two things that I've learned over the past couple of months myself. One is that it's really hard to fight to get the attention of senior decision makers at reputable financial institutions because they have various priorities. And the second thing is I tend to believe that once the regulator understands the advantages of data integrity and provenance solutions in real time, there might be actually a push from the regulator to a gentle push or ask to integrate such a solution. Last question for you, Michael. On the business front, you're also offering very creative solutions. You have your own NFT platform now. Yeah. I appreciate you also wear the Twitch hat, which itself was issued as an NFT. Yeah. What is this platform about, and how do you think, what do you see the demand in the market?
Yeah. I think it just extends on what I said earlier about a bank's role is fundamentally changing. What we deem value is fundamentally changing. Human beings now can just monetize their consciousness through art and now have something that is worth a considerable amount of money. And for us, it was just a no-brainer. We built ourselves really as a bank, but a data bank to encapsulate human creativity and consciousness. And the NFT strategy very much fits into that. Also, the strategy of us as a business and our media efforts over the years is to really break into the mainstream, really try and help bring SV mainstream. And the way to do that is to listen to them. We're hearing their concerns, we're hearing what they want. They are enjoying the boom of NFTs, but it's also the problems in the plumbing of NFTs. And my job, and I think all of our jobs in the banking world, is to reduce friction and to allow currency to flow. So Gravity's solution is to really just get rid of all of the friction around the subject matter of NFTs and allow it to really, truly flourish and creation to be allowed to be created and housed and banked. So it's very, for us, integrated into our core mission of banking value for individuals. And also, let's get SV mainstream and also naturally get the brand Gravity mainstream. I think it's going to be very, very impactful to the space to get some really, really cool names integrated into the space.
Thanks for the outlook. Last question for Daniel. I understand you're also active in the NFT world a bit. I see here and there an intellectual piece. What does SNGLR Group, what will you guys do and how active will you be in the financial industry?
In the financial industry, we just want to, if the banks want, right, help them jumping kind of into this exponential world with this blockchain, but also AI and other technologies. But like Michael, I'm super excited about NFT because for the first time, it doesn't attract the speculators only that say, okay, it's a currency. It has already some speculative elements, and I think we need to get that out again of the NFT space because I see so many artists to finally, it's about disintermediation, right? I mean, if you want to be a big shot in the art world, you have to get your art dealers like you, the galleries, you need to actually find a space where you can publish. And NFT solves all that. So we are currently actually working both with a gallery and a famous art brand, a brand that everyone here in the room would know. And they are looking at that and they're seeing it half threat, half opportunity. And it's going to be super exciting. So I think the next years, NFT may give a whole different spin to the entire blockchain world. And I'm also personally happy that this whole crypto narrative and is the price up, is the price down, that's going to be probably overshadowed because there's so many great artists out there, but then NFT is not just art. It's caps, it's kicks.
It's cars. I learned from Michael.
It's cars. Yeah. It's collectibles. I mean, horse breeding and racing games, and it's gaming. So a lot of things that actually, we're probably none of us is a millennial. No offense, but the next generation and the ones after, I mean, they will have totally different ways to spend their time and things they like and don't like, and we need to prepare their world, not ours, and not of our legacy clients that are definitely not millennials.
a stronger focus on utility. If you're still looking for a technology partner, I think you guys should chat.
Yeah,
We're talking.
we are already connected.
And on this, I want to close. I want to really thank you. I encourage all the entrepreneurs here to also, seek an exchange with these gentlemen. There is tons of experience here, unique perspectives for the financial industry, but also other sectors within Switzerland. So, enjoy your lunch break, and we'll see you after the break. Thank you.
Thank you.